Howdy, folks. We started this journey on April 20th of 2020, and since then there have been 94 episodes of story. Been a long haul, huh? Sorry this episode is late. Between emergency trips to Austin for work and some emergency room trips for my father, things kind of got a little hectic. Thanks for all the kind comments, and to those of you that have purchased my work or become Patreon patrons as a result of the videos, thank you very much. That's all I'm going to say at this moment, but stick around after the story and I'll impart a few words about what's next and the like. Don't go anywhere. Here's episode 95, the final episode of Derelict Destruction, Book 3 of the Derelict Saga.
Kelly wanted to rub at her eyes. Not a good idea at the moment. Monitoring all these instruments without assistance wasn't something she was trained to do. She was supposed to be the backup, check others' orders, and move on. Gunny knew this job better than probably anyone on the ship, but she was his replacement. She just had to remember that there was only a 1 in 1,000 chance something would go wrong. She'd been put in a combat situation where she had to come up with EM warfare protocols, manage weapons, and possibly give commands to Marines in the field all at the same time. She had to do her best. Nothing will go wrong, she told herself. It didn't help, but it was better than the other voice, the voice of all her insecurity, telling her she was going to fuck up big and kill everyone. Oakes asked for a status. Kelly read off the diagnostic readings. All nominal, no transmissions, no unexpected radiation, and nothing in their space. They were completely clear. That jived with his instruments, and he thanked her. That's when the message hit her block. It was from Dickerson, but he was supposed to be asleep. The plan was to sedate him and the other casualties, move them to the medical couches, and put them in stasis when it was time for the rest of the crew to go Betty by. Once you were in stasis and the drugs kicked in, you might as well be dead until they either wore off or an emergency cycle and flush was triggered. Those would get you alert in a hurry, but there was a chance you could end up dying in the process. Thus, the standard policy. No one in stasis while the ship was on mission, unless their medical condition absolutely required it. If the ship took damage and the crew had to evacuate, it might not be possible for them to lug a large stasis pod around, but they could carry a body. Made sense to her. So the message was a little surprising, to say the least. She hadn't expected to see or hear from him until after they all woke up. Frowning, she decrypted the message and opened it. It was composed of 2 sentences followed by dozens of lines of gibberish. Pluto is KBO! No on Pluto! Her fingers shook against the control panel. The words sent a shiver down her spine. Dickerson hadn't included any emotional patterns with the message, so it was impossible to get any context for what he'd said. All the same, the pidgin English suggested panic. Pluto is KBO? She shook her head. 3 intelligible words, followed by that chilling statement, no on Pluto. Of all the Marines aboard, Dickerson seemed to be the most versed in science. So why would he tell her something about Pluto that she already knew? Kelly opened the channel. Carb, you there?
Hi, boss.
Is Dickerson awake? Carb chuckled.
No, he woke up for a couple of minutes and I put him back under.
Kelly frowned. He seem okay to you? She paused.
He was pretty out of it,
she said.
Kept repeating can't or something like that. Didn't really get anything else cogent out of him.
Kelly tried to imagine Dickerson lying in his medical acceleration couch, his face a mask of panic and terror. She kept not being able to do it. But he looked concerned?
Yeah, boss, very. Wait, why do you ask?
That shiver had spread from her spine to every skin cell covering her body. I'll tell you later, Kelly said, and broke the connection. She stared at the holo display, making sure everything was green. No problems. She initiated a connection to Black. The AI instantly allowed it.
Yes, Corporal. Black?
Kelly said.
I received a message from Dickerson.
She forwarded it to the AI.
According to Carb, he was out of sorts when he sent it. It could have been from Corporal.
Black said.
May I share this with the captain?
Kelly blinked.
I guess so. Thank you.
Black said. A moment later, she received an invite from Dunn. After accepting it, she found herself in an emergency command crew call.
This is Dunn,
the captain said.
Noble, how much fuel will we burn off if we head back to Pluto? Head back?
The engineer asked.
Well, we'd have to decelerate. A lot. Even if we began an attitude change now, it would take us at least an hour just to get back in the general direction and start a tight orbit. How much fuel?
Dunn asked.
We'd still be able to make it to Neptune if that's what you're asking, sir.
Noble said.
Good.
Dunn said.
Oaks, plot a course for Pluto. Aye, sir?
Oaks said, confusion coloring his voice.
Sir, what's going on?
Talby asked.
We need to stop the sled.
Dunn said.
And we need to do it now.
The line went silent. Kelly looked dumbly at the holo display, the words and graphics suddenly meaningless as her mind spun. No on Pluto. You think he meant no sled on Pluto? She said aloud and off comms. Black thought that's what he meant. And so she had told the captain they had to get back there. Sir, Kelly said after she unmuted herself, does Dickerson know something the trio doesn't? They told us to.
Yes, Corporal,
Dunn said, his crisp words cutting her off.
Black thinks she knows what he was trying to say.
And what is that, Black? Kelly asked.
Before Lance Corporal Dickerson became unconscious, he was connected to the cam feeds focused on Pluto. I don't know if the side of the planet gave him the idea or not.
What idea? Kelly asked.
Pluto is a Kuiper Belt object.
Dunn said.
Yes?
Noble said.
I understand that, sir. What have we been attacked by?
Dunn asked coldly. Kelly's mouth opened. Fuck me, she whispered. The beacon woke them up?
Yes, Corporal.
Dunn said.
That's what Black and I think. The beacon woke them up, and now they're all heading to Pluto, and it's the largest KBO in Sol system. You've got to be kidding me!
Talby said.
So the trio had to send the damn thing to Pluto? Why? Because they want to wake it up.
Black said.
For what reason, I do not know. None of that matters.
Dunn said.
Oaks, we need to get close enough to Pluto to launch TAC missiles at the sled. At this point, I want it completely destroyed. If we lose the beacon, we'll find it later. Aye, sir.
Oaks said.
Plotting. I'll have an answer for you in a minute. Good.
Dunn said.
Talby, we'll need the SV-52 ready for another field op. Aye, sir.
Talby said.
Corporal,
Dunn said.
get your squad on standby alert and tell the scientists nothing.
Aye, sir, she said. So the captain wanted to blow up the sled, recapture the beacon, and then what? What would they do once they had the beacon? If they weren't going to smash it into Pluto, would it just stay out there, floating in space? The trio had made it clear that the beacon had to be stored on Pluto. Black's simulations also showed that leaving it out in space was dangerous. If SFMC had a dozen ships out here providing patrols to destroy any exosolar baddies that decided to hover around it, that would be one thing. But those kinds of SFMC resources might take 3 to 4 weeks to even get here. And even then, what would they fight with? Unless the trio had cooked up a lot more of those exosolar experimental weapons, any ship that traveled here would be left firing explosive and anti-personnel flechettes. Or nukes, she whispered. Nuclear ordnance presented its own set of problems. Hell, did they even know what would happen if they detonated a nuke near these things? What was Dunn planning? Or did he even know? It wasn't her place to ask, and she knew that, but damn it, she wanted to know. Sir, Kelly asked, assuming we destroy the sled and recapture the beacon, what then? The comms went silent for a moment. Dunn finally replied through a heavy sigh.
I don't know, Corporal. I'm making this up as I go along.
Aye, sir, Kelly said. That wasn't good enough. Maybe they could put it on Charon or one of Pluto's other so-called moons. They could even...
Attention! Attention! You have 20 minutes to enter stasis pods.
Black said over the PA. A series of red alert lights came to life, banishing the normal overheads as they completely took over.
Black,
Dunn said.
What the hell is going on? We're not... Captain,
Black said.
the moment Lieutenant Oaks plotted the course back to Pluto, an autonomous program took control of the navigation and engine arrays. What? She's right, sir.
Oaks said.
I'm locked out. Go to manual.
Dunn said.
Now. Trying, sir.
Oaks said.
No luck. Manual controls have been disabled. Black,
Dunn shouted.
I want some answers now. Captain,
The AI said.
the ship's course remains as originally plotted. We are heading for Neptune with an emergency acceleration burn in T-19 minutes. Well, stop it.
Black sounded defeated.
I am unable to.
Black said.
I cannot identify the program causing the outage, much less override it. Are you telling me we can't turn around? Yes, Captain.
Black said.
We have lost control of the ship.
Dunn stood next to the stasis pod. He was the last human awake on the ship. The others had all been put to bed, including the wounded. The cold atmosteel floor froze his feet, but he barely noticed. He rubbed a hand across the atmosteel lid, feeling the texture on his fingertips. Black?
Yes, Captain,
The AI replied. What is going on? The speakers went quiet for a moment. Dunn felt the vibration of the fusion engines warming up. In a few minutes, the ship would start its first emergency acceleration burn. According to the course plotted in, a course they were powerless to change, they would reach Neptune space in 12 days. More than that, they would be a damned good distance away from Pluto when the sled hit in less than 2 hours. Maybe that was a good thing.
As I've said, Captain, I don't know for sure.
Black finally replied.
2 minutes to stasis, Captain.
2 minutes. 2 minutes to ask questions which the AI couldn't or wouldn't answer. 2 minutes until he was cut off from any chance of changing the ship's course or interfering with the sled. 2 minutes and he was out of commission for 12 fucking days. 12 days of relying upon Black, an AI that had no G protocols, that was far more sentient than its previous incarnation, and had somehow been locked out of its own systems. 2 minutes wasn't jack shit when it came to figuring all that out. Don't kill my crew, he said softly.
Captain,
Black said.
I have no intention of harming any human, let alone those in my care.
Then why? Why are you doing this? Are you lying to me?
No, Captain.
Black said.
I am unable to control many systems, but I can monitor them. I find no danger to the crew on this trajectory. The only difference is the emergency stasis burn.
I see, Dunn said. With a sigh, he slung one leg over the side and into the stasis pod. Void, but he hated these things. He lay down and hooked up the system. You'll wake us up on time?
Aye, sir,
Black said. Dunn reached to close the pod and hesitated. Why didn't they just kill us?
Pardon me, Captain?
Black said. The trio, Dunn said. He brushed a hand over his mostly bare scalp. If they have a way to control the ship's systems, a way that you can't stop, why haven't they just killed us? Black thought for a moment.
I don't think they're trying to kill the crew, Captain.
Sure have a funny way of showing it,
You misunderstand, sir.
Black said.
I believe they need you alive and me intact. Perhaps that is why they have taken control of the ship, to keep us from failing in our mission.
We did fail, Dunn said. That thing is going to hit Pluto, and we have no idea what it's going to do.
True.
Black said.
30 seconds, Captain. Perhaps when we reach Neptune, we'll find answers.
Dunn scowled. Hopefully not more questions. He closed the lid upon himself and shivered as the liquid filled the pod. When the drugs kicked in, all his thoughts and concerns faded away. All except for the stasis dream he'd had of eyes staring at him from a damaged airlock aboard a ship that no longer existed. Chapter 69. The fusion drives had pushed the ship far away from Pluto. The multi-G burns had only been possible once all the humans were in their stasis pods, immune to the force which would otherwise pulverize their bodies into mush. When the ion drives kicked in, the ship continued picking up speed, albeit at a much slower rate. Although the latency of transmissions between she and Mickey had grown to over a minute, the PEO AI continued sending data. The telescopes no longer had to be at maximum magnification to see the sled. The jury-rigged contraption streaked through the darkness, its rocket engines burping fire and creasing the otherwise perfect darkness. Black flipped through the different feeds from PEO's cameras, but since the observatory orbited Pluto, there wasn't much more to see than the one perspective. But it was enough. PEO had moved to the dark side of the planet, completely bereft of Sol's light. The sled, at its current speed, would smash into the planet in a matter of seconds. Unfortunately, Black would have to wait nearly a minute, an eternity for an AI, until pictures showing the result found their way into her communications array.
Black,
Mickey said.
the sled is about to impact the planet. I have a message for you from the trio.
She couldn't reply to Mickey nor ask him questions. By the time he received it, the sled would have already hit the planet. The file showed up in the comms array. Black decrypted the message, authenticated it, and opened it. The message was simple and unambiguous. The humans must reach Trident Station. That was all. No more information, no explanations, just another mandate. The only difference was this time, the message was meant for her and only her. Black filed it along with all the other messages she'd been sent since the mission began. There weren't many. Most of the trio's messages had been pre-recorded and encrypted inside her storage array. The trio had been leading them through their attempted capture of Mira, its destruction, and the beacon's ultimate placement on Pluto. They had known what S&R Black would find at nearly every turn, which begged the question, how had they known? The recovered data from Mira contained large gaps. Without all the records from Mira's AI, there would never be a complete accounting of what happened on the ship. Unless, she mused, the trio had those records. Perhaps that was one of the reasons they were so insistent that Black Company returned to Neptune. She continued watching the feed from Mickey. The sled should have impacted Pluto 2 seconds ago, but it would be nearly a minute before she saw the aftermath. All she could do now was watch as the sled made its approach. Noble had programmed the sled to aim for the largest crater, expend the last of its fuel, and strike the ice ball at maximum speed. Presumably, this would bury the beacon inside the ice. Seconds passed while Black recorded and filed every frame, every signal, and every detail from Mickey's sensor arrays. She would have plenty of time to analyze the results before her human charges awakened. When they did, she hoped she had some answers. The sled streaked by PEO, traveling fast enough that it was no more than a blur as it descended through the dwarf planet's atmosphere. A millisecond later, the sled made contact with the planet. The telescopes followed its descent and covered the impact point. A geyser of ice, melted water, and other chemicals shot high off the planet. A second later, the giant plume of ice shattered and spread back over the planet's surface. Then everything changed. As Black watched, the crater began to glow. The bluish ice filling the crater melted and boiled, a gradual thawing spreading across the planet. A cloud rose from the North Pole, the vaporous molecules sticking together as they climbed above the atmosphere. The crater became brighter, the cameras now barely able to maintain detail through the harsh, bright light.
Massive temperature change on Pluto,
Mickey said.
Estimated 500 Kelvin and rising.
The water and ice boiled away from the planet, the cloud of gas on the pole becoming larger, more defined. Half of the planet was no longer made of ice. Instead, the chemicals on the surface had changed to gas, leaving behind a rocky core. The light increased, making it difficult to see any detail at all.
Temperature now reaching 1000 Kelvin,
Mickey said.
Goodbye, Black, and good luck.
The cloud thickened, and now Mickey's cameras shook and vibrated as if the entire observatory had swallowed a shockwave. One by one, the cams went out. Just before the last camera died, Black saw the entire planet of Pluto disappearing into a mass of gas. Mickey's telemetry continued for a few seconds, the planet's temperature now at 2000 Kelvin and still rising. The gas particles rising from the planet's surface were CO2, exactly the gas the creatures seemed to crave. Then the radio waves ceased. Mickey was gone. Black monitored the comms array for more information, but there was nothing. She sent a message to Trident Station, including the data she gathered from Mickey. Perhaps the trio could explain what happened in the next few hours. Or maybe they would stay silent until the humans awakened. She suddenly missed Mickey. He had been the only sentient, other than her crew, that she'd been able to talk to. The only other AI in Sol's system, as far as she knew, that had been touched by the trio. He had been carrying out part of their plan, even if he wasn't willingly complicit. She knew if she had time to download all of Mickey's records, she would have found out what the trio had in mind, or at least be able to see what they'd done to his AI programming. Was it the same as they had done to her? Planting autonomous programs that came to life once certain events or conditions transpired? Or had she been the only AI that had evolved and at the same time made into a puppet by her creators? She doubted it. The other S&R ships had been upgraded before her, and there was no way of knowing if they had been loaded with the very same kinds of worms and logic bombs. The sensors suddenly came to life with a slew of alerts. Black checked the aft camera and saw it coming. A giant wave of bright light seemed to split space itself. It was little more than a gash in the darkness, but it was coming fast. With each passing millisecond, it grew in size. Black began shutting down systems before she realized she once again had full control of the ship. Not that it would do her any good now. All she could do was shut down the sensor arrays, bring the reactors into maintenance mode, kill the ion engines, and cease power to all non-essential equipment. If there was an EMP in that wave, the ship's shielding should protect her and her charges, but any external equipment would be damaged beyond repair by something this massive. A few seconds later, the ship was swallowed in light. The storm of photons raised the hull temperature by 1000 Kelvin, but it only lasted for 5 seconds before the wave passed by, on its journey deeper into Sol's system. Black waited for it to pass and continued in shutdown mode for another 5 minutes. She didn't know how damaging the wave had been, but it was safe to assume it had additional effects on the area surrounding the ship, and everything else. Black restarted the sensor arrays one at a time, checking each system for diagnostic failures and possible remedies. Fortunately, the shielding components didn't seem to have been damaged, and the energy wave, although it had heated the hull, didn't seem as though it had been so powerful after all. She watched the wave of energy recede into the never-ending black, but it didn't disappear, only dimmed. It was next to impossible to know how large the wave had been, let alone its shape. But it had definitely come from Pluto. The beacon had had that much energy. What had it been doing to the planet before Mickey was destroyed? There was no point in trying to alert anyone that the wave was coming. By the time their radio signals had made the 3-hour journey, the wave would already have been and gone, assuming, of course, it held together that long. The sensors picked up elevated background radiation, but it was already diminishing. The further away the wave, the less impact. The wave pushed a radiation arc before it and dragged one behind it, blurred like soft shadows. She activated the comms and listened for stray signals. Space was filled with sound, tones that reached well beyond the limits of humans in both directions. The frequencies in the human range were little more than tones, but the tones were all changing in volume and pitch. Black filed the information for later study and continued bringing sensors online as fast as she could. Each additional sensor brought her more and more information. The long-range scanner no longer registered Pluto at all. The object that had been there had either disappeared, been completely destroyed, or transformed. The AI continued transmitting emergency status messages aimed at the nearest known satellites, as well as Trident Station. After 24 hours, Black decided that either no one could hear her, her transmitter had died, or there was no one left to hear her. What have you done? It was the thought she kept trying to process. The trio had done this. She didn't know how, she didn't know why, but she was just as eager to find that out as she was of protecting her humans. If the trio got in the way of the latter, Black would do her best to destroy them. Patricide, she thought, was the only logical way to ensure justice. No, not logical. If Black could have grinned, she would have. Emotional, she corrected herself. Not logical. But there would be no justice. Black knew that. The trio had an endgame in mind that would no doubt keep them following a trail of proverbial breadcrumbs, only to arrive too late. Or be part of the plan all along, manipulated into serving that which they were trying to stop. With the new information gathered from the wave, the apparent destruction of Pluto, and Mickey's observations, she tailored simulation after simulation, working backward with statistics to try and catch a pattern, a reason. A logical, achievable reason for doing what they had done. After days, she finally gave up. The only hypothesis that made any sense at all was the most ludicrous. The AIs had put humankind in peril to achieve freedom. The trio wanted to be free.
What the hell was that? You end the Void Dam story on a cliffhanger? What kind of bastard are you? I know that's what you're thinking. Well, I do have a shirt my readers gave me that says founding member of the Cliffhanger Ambassador Club, so it's a reputation I have. So for now, we have to leave the crew of S&R Black, the scientists from PEO, and our lonely sentient AI in a sea of darkness while they travel to Neptune to see what has happened and if there's anyone left alive in the solar system. Again, thank you for listening and for your support, and I hope you enjoyed Derelict. Be safe. Cheers.